This is The First Century, a podcast devoted to stories from that influential period of history including Rome, Judea, Christianity, and more. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Schmisek. Get ready to go back in time and enter a world before computers, the stagecoach, the printing press, or even stirrups had been invented for horses. We're about to enter the first century. Episode 15, The Death of John the Baptist. Herod Antipas was in the fortified city of Machaerus, feeling secure in his kingdom, especially having secured imperial support for his divorce of Phasaelus and subsequent marriage to Herodias. Antipas, who had not yet heard that Sejanus was dead, was hosting another festive dinner party with significant guests. He would spare no expense. Among those attending were his close childhood friend Menachem, some of his stewards including Chusa and his wife Joanna. Lambs were being prepared, as was a fattened calf. He served garum, a Roman fish sauce made from fermented fish, oil, and salt. It had a flavor profile similar to current-day Asian fish sauces like Vietnam's Nok Mam or Thailand's Nam Pla. The best wine imported from Italy would also delight his guests. Local dates, raisins, and cakes were served at the conclusion. He even had musicians there to provide entertainment. Antipas was proud of what he had accomplished. He had been named Herod, and even though he did not have the formal title king, he told himself that the title of Herod was just as good for those subjects he ruled. Phasaelus was out of the picture, having run away to be with her father, and Antipas was now together with Herodias and her daughter Salome, who was about 16 years old and beautiful. His guests would admire not only his wife, but also his stepdaughter Salome. So it was something of a happy surprise when, after dinner and so many cups of wine, Salome began to move to the center of the room. She moved slowly and eventually started to dance to the music being played by Herod's talented musicians. But it seemed Salome had more talent. Soon, she had attracted the attention of all the guests, who had ceased conversing and turned their gaze to the graceful moves of the dancer. When she concluded, she collapsed deliberately in her mother's arms. Herod jumped up and began applauding, as did his guests. This was a pinnacle moment for him. In his enthusiasm, he said to her, "Salome, ask for anything up to half my kingdom, and it's yours." The teenage girl in the arms of her mother Herodias heard her whisper, "The head of John on a platter." Salome smiled. She had heard of this desert preacher. He disrespected her mother and had been rightfully imprisoned. Salome gladly acquiesced to her mother's wish and made the request. Upon hearing the ask, Herod Antipas was perplexed. He had imprisoned John, but that was to remove him from the scene without causing an uproar. Executing this popular preacher could cause unrest or even riots. Still, Herod now looked about him to see his guests, whose collective gaze was turned in on him. Now it was Herod's turn to comply with his stepdaughter's wish. It seemed that only moments later, the head of John was before him, and the guests roared their approval, while Salome took a bow, and her mother let slip a sly grin. For Herodias, this festering problem had been solved. Once news spread of John's death, his one-time apprentice, Jesus, went into hiding. Herod Agrippa and his wife Cypros were in Malatha in Idumea, having left Rome indebted. Agrippa was severely depressed and even contemplating suicide. Herod Agrippa's wife sensed his condition and sent a letter to Agrippa's cousin, and now Antipas's wife, Herodias, letting her know of the situation. Herodias, in turn, encouraged Antipas to help Agrippa, and Antipas obliged. In a spirit of generosity, Antipas made the indebted Herod Agrippa a magistrate in the Galilean city of Tiberias, which provided him with a regular income. But Agrippa, having spent nearly his entire life in Rome, found the new capital city of a backwater province to be small, insignificant, parochial, and worst of all, boring. He needed a way out. Though Antipas had had John executed, Jesus did not seem to have learned the lesson, as he eventually came out of hiding. Now, Jesus continued to attract multitudes, but not all the people knew about Jesus. Some who saw him for the first time thought he was actually John, who had been raised from the dead. Others believed that maybe he was Elijah or some other prophet from of old who had come back to life. Antipas heard about these rumors, but wouldn't believe them. Even so, his curiosity was piqued. He wanted to meet this new preacher and wonder-worker. Back in Capri, around the year 32, Tiberius enjoyed a 2-day feast and drinking bout with friends Lucius Pomponius Flaccus and Lucius Piso Caesoninus. Like many drinking bouts, those who participated solved all the world's, or at least Rome's, issues, and by the end of the Bacchanalia, Tiberius determined to make Flaccus governor of Syria and to appoint Piso the prefect of the city of Rome. When Tiberius made the commissions effective, he said these two were, quote, excellent fellows at all hours of the day or night. Finally, after 10 years of never having set foot in Syria, Lucius Aelius Lamia was relieved of duty in favor of Flaccus, who was certain to claim his province in the east. Flaccus knew Agrippa. They too had been drinking companions in Rome, and so he was at least familiar with the conditions and some of the people in that region. Flaccus set sail immediately. About that same time, in 32, Tiberius named another Flaccus, Aulus Avilius Flaccus, who had been childhood friends with Tiberius's grandson Gemellus, and who had befriended Tiberius and Macro as well, governor of Egypt. Tiberius considered him a close friend. After all, he was the one who made accusations against Agrippina, and by doing so facilitated her exile. So Lucius Pomponius Flaccus was governor of Syria, while Aulus Avilius Flaccus was governor of Egypt. The consuls in 33 were Servius Galba, the same who had been named in Livia's will but was denied that inheritance by Tiberius, and Lucius Sulla. Tiberius called Galba to Capri to discuss some business and was impressed by the learning and political skill that he displayed. In his own moment of providential insight, as he had taken an interest in astrology from Thrasyllus, Tiberius proclaimed to him in Greek, "You too, Galba, will someday have a taste for empire." Back in Rome, imprisoned 3 years earlier on the Palatine and having been reduced to eating his bed matting, Drusus died of starvation. His diary was read by the Senate, who, as a body, were appalled at his conditions. About the same time, Agrippina died by starvation on Panditaria, 2 years to the day after Sejanus had died. As for Gaius, the only remaining son of Agrippina, he was given a quaestorship, one of the lowest positions on the cursus honorum, but at least he was on the cursus, and not dead, like his brothers and mother. Next time, we'll hear about the execution of John the Baptist's early apprentice, Jesus of Nazareth.